All right, let's dive straight into the deep end with a book that is the Bible of the accumulation camp, The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins.
This book started as a series of letters from Collins to his daughter. He wanted to strip away all the complexity the financial industry uses to confuse people. His tone is patient, plain, and designed for a smart beginner who just wants to get it right and get on with their life.
And his central thesis is right there in the title. It's simple. Not easy, but simple. You avoid debt, you spend way less than you earn, and you invest the surplus in broad, low-cost index funds. Then, and this is the hardest part, you do nothing for decades.
The goal isn't a life of luxury. Collins calls it FU money. It's having a stock of capital large enough that you have the freedom to say no to any job, employer, or situation that doesn't work for you. Freedom is the real objective.
His strategy is built on overcoming two types of friction. First, the external kind: fees, commissions, and taxes. He advocates for holding just one fund: Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index or VTSX. It's cheap and self-cleansing.
The second and more important friction is internal, our own behavior. Collins stresses that the market is the greatest wealth-building tool in history, but only for those who can stomach its volatility without panicking and selling at the bottom. A market crash, for an accumulator, is a sale, a chance to buy more shares at a lower price.
But the book isn't without its critics. Its advice is deeply US-centric. An all-in bet on the US stock market is just that, a bet. An investor in Japan in 1989 who did the same thing would have waited decades just to break even. It also focuses entirely on disciplined saving, saying almost nothing about how to increase your income.
Sticking with the theme of timeless, simple advice, let's go way back to 1926 and The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason.
This one is a collection of parables set in ancient Babylon. The language is archaic, which makes the advice feel like ancient, settled wisdom. The core idea is that the rules of wealth are universal and never change.
Its most enduring contribution is the concept of paying yourself first. The book's hero, Arcad, explains that a part of everything you earn is yours to keep. He recommends saving at least 1/10 of your income before you pay anyone else.
And from there, he lays out the 7 cures for a lean purse, which include controlling your spending, making your goal multiply, and increasing your ability to earn. It's a complete, if elementary, system. The book's other great framework is the 70/20/10 plan for escaping debt. Live on 70%, use 20% to repay creditors, and keep 10% for yourself.
As a primer, it's almost perfect. The lessons are memorable. But for a serious investor, it's very thin. A 10% savings rate is far too low for early retirement, and it has nothing to say about modern concepts like inflation or taxes. It's great for installing the correct defaults, but you need more sophisticated tools later on.
Which brings us to a book that throws a bomb at that entire slow and steady mindset, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Right. Kiyosaki frames his argument around two father figures. His poor dad was his real father, a highly educated government employee who valued job security. His rich dad was a friend's entrepreneurial father who understood ownership and how to make money work for him.
The central thesis is that the middle class is trained to work for money, while the wealthy learn to acquire assets that generate income. Financial literacy, he argues, isn't taught in schools, and its absence is what keeps people in the rat race.
His most famous concept is the redefinition of assets and liabilities. It's simple. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. By this logic, he makes his most provocative claim. For most people, their house is a liability, not an asset, because of the mortgage, taxes, and maintenance costs.
Now for the critical assessment. The book is a fantastic mindset jolt. It can be genuinely liberating for someone trapped in salary and security thinking. But as an instruction manual, it's poor.
It's incredibly vague on specifics and functions as a sales funnel for Kiyosaki's seminars. Some of the advice is downright reckless, like his contempt for diversification. One of his own companies even filed for bankruptcy. The verdict? A useful reframing of ideas, but not a trusted guide.
From a book that's mostly motivation, we turn to one that's in a different universe of intellectual rigor, Poor Charlie's Almanac, a collection of talks and writings from Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner.
This is the outlier in the collection. It's not a get-rich book at all. It's a treatise on rationality and clear thinking. Munger's central idea is the latticework of mental models, that to truly understand reality, you need to know the big ideas from all the major disciplines: physics, psychology, economics, history, and so on.
Otherwise, as he says, to the man with only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. The heart of the book is his talk on the psychology of human misjudgment, where he outlines about 25 cognitive biases that cause us to make irrational decisions.
Things like incentive-caused bias, or social proof, where we copy others, leading to bubbles and panics. Munger's point is that a rational person must build a checklist of these biases and run every important decision against it. His core principles are also here. Invert, always invert, and stay within your circle of competence.
It's by far the most valuable book in this collection, but also the most demanding. It gives you a way to think, not a recipe to follow. And of course, there's a huge survivorship bias. We're reading Munger's Almanac because his method worked. We don't read the books of the many rational investors who were ruined by bad luck.
That's a great point. From Munger's ideas on how the wealthy think, let's move to a book based on data about how they actually live. The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Denko.
This book is pure research. Authors surveyed thousands of millionaires, and their finding contradicted the popular image of wealth. The people with prestige jobs and fancy cars were often just high earners with low net worth.
The genuinely wealthy were often first-generation millionaires in unglamorous businesses. Think scrap metal, not hedge funds. They lived in modest homes, drove used cars, and were masters of frugality. The book's famous phrase for the high spenders is big hat, no cattle.
Their core distinction is between the income statement affluent, focused on spending a large salary, and the balance sheet affluent, focused on building net worth. One of their most pointed findings was about economic outpatient care, the financial help that affluent parents give to their adult children, which they found is often corrosive.
The book's strength is its data-driven core, but that data is now a bit dated, coming from the early 1990s. Also, it might give too much credit to frugality alone. A large share of their subjects were also business owners, so thrift was necessary, but it was often paired with the high income and equity that ownership provides.
Speaking of which, that brings us to an author who has nothing but contempt for the slow, frugal path. Let's talk about The Millionaire Fastlane by M.J. DeMarco.
DeMarco built and sold an internet company and got rich in his 30s. He wrote this book as an angry rebuttal to what he calls the slow lane, the advice to work, save 10%, and retire at 65. He sees it as a trap that trades your youth for a deferred, uncertain payoff.
His alternative is the fast lane, building a business that is a system, an asset that scales, detaches your income from your time, and can ultimately be sold. The most useful part of the book is his 5-part filter for a fast lane business, the SENSE framework.
It stands for control, entry, need, time, and scale. You need to have control over your business. Barriers to entry should be high. It must serve a real need. It has to be detached from your time, and it must have scale. It's a fantastic checklist for a quality business.
But the tone is loud and repetitive, and his caricature of the slow lane is a bit of a straw man. He also completely waves away the massive failure rate of new businesses. You have to read it for the framework, not the attitude.
From DeMarco's aggressive formula, we get to a book that's more like a series of brutal, hard-won confessions. How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis.
Dennis was a British magazine publisher, the founder of titles like Maxim. He built a fortune from nothing. And this isn't a system. It's the testimony of one self-made man. His one commandment, which he repeats relentlessly, is never, ever give up your equity. Ownership is the entire game.
He's also brutally honest about the psychology. He says the main barrier to wealth is the fear of looking foolish. The people who get rich are willing to risk public failure and humiliation, and he's blunt about luck. It matters enormously. Persistence, he says, just enlarges the surface area on which luck can act.
But the most valuable part of the book is his conclusion. He states unequivocally that getting rich did not make him happy. It enabled his addictions, corroded his relationships, and consumed the best years of his life. Coming from a man who absolutely won the game, it's a stunningly powerful warning.
As a manual, the book is unsystematic. It's pure anecdote, which Dennis himself admits. But that honesty is what makes it essential. It's the perfect moral counterweight to the hustle gospel, a reminder of the real price that is often paid.
Finally, from the raw confession of Felix Dennis, we come to the cool, philosophical aphorisms of a modern Silicon Valley icon, the Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
This book is unique because Naval never wrote it. It was assembled by Eric Jorgensen from a decade of Ravikant's tweets, interviews, and essays. It's a collection of distilled thoughts on two topics, wealth and happiness.
Naval's core idea is to seek wealth, not money or status. Wealth, he says, is assets that earn while you sleep. The way to get there is through a combination of specific knowledge, expertise that can't be taught, accountability, and most importantly, leverage.
And his taxonomy of leverage is the book's signature insight. There's labor, there's capital, but the most decisive modern form is products with no marginal cost of replication, code and media.
He calls this permissionless leverage. Anyone with a laptop can create content that works for them 24/7 without needing anyone's approval. In a world of infinite leverage, he argues, judgment becomes more important than effort.
The second half of the book argues that the skills for acquiring wealth won't deliver peace. His most famous line is, "Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want." Happiness, then, is a skill, the skill of wanting less and being present.
It's a brilliant modern statement of the ownership and leverage thesis. But its aphoristic style means it asserts more than it argues, and it's very calibrated to the Silicon Valley software world. Still, as a guide to thinking about leverage in the modern economy, it's incredibly valuable.